So just in case there's any uncertainty about my positions, that's what I believe. I got this on eBay, good price. Um, I wouldn't exactly wear it every day, into the city, but that's what I believe. I want Harrison Waltz to win this election, absolutely, more than I've ever wanted a presidential ticket to win. Um, so vice presidential debate tonight, ABC in New York City, between Tim Walz of Minnesota and JD Vance of Ohio. Both white Midwestern guys, but other than that, a lot of differences between them. Having said that, the overall tone of the debate was certainly more civil. It almost felt like a normal debate. There was no major fireworks. There was nothing really that stood out in terms of being whoa, shocking. There was one point when the moderators muted the microphones because Vance was pushing back on a fact checking thing. But compared to the Trump Harris debate, it was definitely more civil. Um, I've written a lot of notes here. I'm going to go through some of them. I'm not going to go through everything, but just a quick word about the nature of vice presidential debates. Generally, they're seen as an afterthought. They're not really taken that. I don't think there's that much interest in them. I mean, really, who remembers Tim Kaine versus Mike Pence from 8 years ago? I don't think anyone cares that much. Um, but this year around, it does feel more important than usual. There have, of course, been some famous moments in vice presidential debates, like Joe Lieberman saying, Lieberman, I think it was, anyway, Senator, Jack Kennedy to Dan Quayle. That was a famous, I think it was Joe Lieberman. I could be getting that wrong. But anyway, so there are some famous moments in these debates, but generally speaking, they're kind of an afterthought. I mean, even Biden Ryan from 2012, people don't really remember these things that much. This year round, I do think it's more important because every election is important, but I believe this will be the 10th presidential election, American presidential election in my lifetime. And I really do believe it's the most important because of the consequences on democracy. I believe Trump is dangerous. I believe he is a genuinely dangerous character. CNN's just doing a post debate analysis here. They didn't outright say who they thought won, but interestingly enough, they did seem to give more leverage to Vance. They said that he came out attacking more, and Waltz didn't really push back against it. That seems to be the take that Jake Tapper and Abby Phillips took on it. Like I say, I've taken a lot of notes. I'm trying to go try and touch on some of these. For me, and I'm trying to say this as objectively as possible because absolutely I'm pro Waltz. There's no question about it. But I'll give Vance his due. He done well tonight. It wasn't a disaster for him. Well, in the sense that he had to come across as more human. And, I don't really like that expression, but I think he does have an image problem. And honestly, my own views of Vance were, I didn't know him super well, but I I take issue with anyone who gets into a bed with Donald Trump, particularly given how many of Trump's cabinet are now against him. I think I can't help questioning Vance's motivations here. Is it just his own ambition? Is it, I mean, particularly as he's been so critical of Trump? Um, I do question the moral compass of anyone that wants to associate their name with Donald J. Trump, especially at this point, given everything he has said and done. I definitely question them. The same with his lawyer, the same with his other surrogates and apologists. Trump is a disgrace and he's a threat to democracy. I don't think that is an exaggeration. Unfortunately, a lot of Americans, it isn't the number one issue. The number one issues are immigration and the economy, not the democracy thing. So this is an area where the Democrats do need to push harder on, not the democracy thing, important as it is, but immigration, the economy. I mean, for example, I think Harris and Waltz should visit Arizona and other border states. Anyway, I think that it's hard to say who won in terms of speaking purely objectively. I want to say Tim Waltz won, but I think it was quite balanced. Um, I would say Waltz was much stronger on the gun issue, stronger on the abortion issue, and stronger on the democracy issue. But I have to say Vance probably got it on the immigration issue. Walt's done what he had to do. He pointed out that there was a bipartisan bill that Trump turned down, but I think just generally the Democrats are seen as weaker on the border. Waltz pointed out that only 2% of Trump's infamous wall had been built. The Mexicans haven't paid for anything. But, it fell flat. Even pointing out that Harris was a prosecutor against people traffickers. Unfortunately, people won't look at that. They'll look at her record as vice president. And it isn't outstanding. It's hard to really boast about that. She's not going to go down as one of the great vice presidents. That could be an Achilles heel. I'm going to touch on the areas. Let's see if I can. I've got a lot of stuff here, so I'm going to try to stay focused. Let's see. I'll start with the gun issue. It wasn't first in chronologically in the debate, but it's one that I care a lot about. Vance was on the abortion issue. Vance was talking about the right to life and all of that. But the Republicans more broadly are hypocrites on this issue because they talk about how precious young life is and all of that. But when it comes to gun violence, preventable gun violence, they do next to nothing. They pander to the gun lobby. And I think that Waltz definitely got a strong point on this where he said, sometimes it's just the guns. Because Vance was wanting to talk about depression, mental health problems, etc. Well, you know what? Other countries have those problems. Japan has very high suicide rate. So does the Nordic countries. Um, in Britain, we've got problems with mental health issues. So, Vance was trying to, as Republicans always do, try to make it about those issues. Waltz pointed out, sometimes it's just the guns. And he said that both he and Harris are gun owners. They're not against the Second Amendment. It's a pity that Democrats always have to have this disclaimer because in my lifetime, no president, no Democrat president, Clinton, Obama, Biden, none of them have tried to grab guns. It's one of the biggest lies of the gun lobby. And Vance didn't say that, but it's just for the recent statement he came out with after the latest mass shooting in a school in Georgia. These things are a fact of life. It shows the disregard that they have. Now, at one point, Walt spoke about his 17-year-old son witnessing a mass shooting, and Vance said, "Oh, well, that's awful. I didn't realize that." Um, but I can't help but think, Waltz wasn't going to say it, but I can't help but think it's hard to take Vance that seriously on this issue because he talks about compassion and he talks about it's awful, Christ be with them and all. But the Republican record, not just Vance, Republicans more broadly, is to do next to nothing on this issue. And it's just, I find it infuriating because this doesn't happen in other developed countries to the same extent. It just doesn't happen in Britain, doesn't happen in Japan, it doesn't happen in Australia. Even countries that have a high gun ownership rate, like Canada and Italy, I mean, higher than Britain, it's not as regular as the United States. So for Vance to say it's a fact of life, an absolute disgrace. Um, Actually, Vance made the point, oh, what about violence in big cities? And I'd thought, okay, that is a weak point for the Democrats, but Waltz effectively pushed back on that by pointing out that in Minnesota, a lot of gun deaths actually come from rural suicides. That's a point we don't often consider when it comes to gun violence in America. It's often in light of the mass shootings, but there is also a lot of suicides from guns. You know, it may well be if people didn't have those weapons, they, might think twice about it. Yes, there's other ways to take your own life, but it, you know, it's an instantaneous, drastic, fatal thing. Um, let's see, if I can get out some other points. The abortion issue, and this will be trending, of course. Waltz mentioned a young woman by the name of Amber Furman. I should say a lot of points in the debate, both men said, "Oh, I agree with my opponent." But on this issue of abortion, Waltz was saying, we have a situation in America where a young woman travels 600 miles. I don't know if this young woman died, but that's the sort of situation that they're in. He also pointed out that in Minnesota, of course, he's governor in Minnesota, they have one of the lowest rates of teen pregnancy in the country. There's been a lot of scaremongering from the Trump side. The Democrats want to um, have abortion up to 9 months and so on. But I think it's a bit like the gun debate. There's a lot of scaremongering. Another one is that Tim Walz is a far left socialist. It's a lot of nonsense. I see no evidence of that. On the issue of protectionism, this was with the economy. Walz said, I'm a, I'm a union guy. I don't want jobs going overseas. I'll give Vance's due. He was quite smart with some of the rebuttals. For example, on the climate change thing, he mentioned because it was brought up that Helene devastating 160 deaths. Um, but Vance made the point, actually it's it's in the interest of dealing with the environment to have jobs at home. Although he did make the dubious claim that America's the cleanest economy in the world, that would definitely raise eyebrows. Um, let's see. I've got a lot of notes here. I'm not going to have time to say everything, and I want to watch the post they're showing the target group here. I want to watch that. Yeah, I'll just leave it there. I think definitely Vance done a lot better than his boss, but I still question Vance's moral compass. The fact that he agreed to be the running mate to a man who incited his own supporters to basically shout, "Hang Mike Pence." This can't be understated. This can't be understated. And when Vance was asked about that, he just ignored it. On the issue of democracy, again, he was asked point blank by Tim Walz, "Do you accept that Donald Trump lost?" And he wouldn't answer the question. He tried talking about the real threat to democracy being censorship. But the Democrats, what they're talking about is violent threats. In Trump land, anything goes. Same with Elon Musk. It's this idea that free speech somehow gives you a right to make violent threats and to vilify people and spread false information that can lead to violence. That's exactly what happened on January the 6th, as Trump was pushing conspiracy theories. So the right has a problem, I think, with this. When they talk about censorship, what they're really saying is we can say whatever the hell we want, whether it's true or not, whether it incites violence or not. And I think Walt's got the upper hand there. He said, "You don't cry fire in a crowded theatre." And that's very true. We've seen a similar debate in the UK. But again, during the summer's riots, you don't cry fire in a crowded theatre. I'm going to wrap this up because I'll probably run out of space. There's a lot more notes I've got here, and no doubt I'll forget something. Yeah, Waltz was fact checked on being in Tiananmen Square in 1989. He admitted he could be a knucklehead at times. Vance admitted that, well, he was brought up on the issue of previously being very critical of Trump, calling him an American Hitler. He said, "Oh, I believe the media's lies." So both men were called up on being, misspeaking. But I just think for Vance to get into bed with Trump after what Trump incited against his predecessor or his would be predecessor if Vance becomes vice president. Um, I don't know what Vance is doing. I don't know if he's trying to get more name recognition because he secretly knows that they'll probably lose this election. So he's just trying to get more of a high profile for his own presidential run, or if he's just ambitious, or I don't know what it is. But to go from being right about Trump, talking about how awful Trump is, to being basically his lackey, is I think that puts serious questions on his moral judgment. I really do. The same with anyone else who serves as a Trump apologist. I mean, it's a disgrace that Donald Trump's even on the ticket, to be quite honest. A convicted felon, given everything he's done. And I'll say, if Trump wins this election, I honestly think it will put questions to America's role in the world. But that's maybe for another video. So who won tonight? I think it was close. And in all objectivity, I think Walt scraped it. But I do think it was a close debate, much, much closer than Harris versus Trump. Harris utterly dominated Trump in that debate. The moderators, I think, done a good job tonight. They can't be accused of bias because they fact checked both men. So I think they've done a good job. But yeah, it was an interesting debate, more civil. One last thing, Tim Walz quoted FDR in his closing speech, which I liked, because I watched a documentary about Franklin Roosevelt recently. The only thing you have to fear is fear itself. Anyway, I'll wrap this up.